Messianic Synagogue in Plainview, New York. This Shabbat, we're not going to be at our shul, very unusual, because one of our favorite sons is getting married up in Boston. So many of us are traveling up there to be involved in this simcha. So we want to leave you here with a drash, a message for the day, and something to think about until we get together again a week from this Shabbat. So let's take a look at the PowerPoint for this message. Here it is. Let's do it this way. Undesirable foreigner. A sermon from Parshat Ki Tetzei, which will be August 22nd. And we're taking from the end of that parsha, from chapter 24 of Deuteronomy, verse 17 to verse 22. So let us begin. We are living in a time of outspoken hostility to certain groups that wish to immigrate to the United States. These groups have been labeled undesirable, and we're not speaking here about criminals. We're talking about Sudanese people, we're talking about Haitian people, we're speaking about impoverished groups and religious groups that have specifically been singled out as unwanted. Well, some would say we're only restricting illegal immigrants. It's not so simple. It's not so easy. And it's not so new. Let me explain. I grew up in a Brooklyn neighborhood that was predominantly Italian and Jewish. When they immigrated, these two groups were considered profoundly lower class, other, and undesirable. My grandparents were on one side Sicilians, and on the other side, Eastern Orthodox Jews, Eastern European Orthodox Jews. Real Americans viewed both groups to be low class, undesirable, and irretrievably other. I remember my father telling me that when he entered the workforce about 1920, when he was 16 years old, newspaper want ads said Jews need not apply, meaning we don't want your kind, don't bother. Prior to the 1920s, immigration to the United States was largely open to Europeans. However, a rise in nativism, which we would term white nationalism, led to major legislative changes. Let's look at a couple of those right here. The Emergency Quota Act of 1921 that capped total yearly immigration to the United States at 350,000 people. And it set limits on the basis of nationality. We'll take some of those, we'll take some of those. No, we don't want those. We don't want those. No, Southern Europeans, Italians, no. We'll take Norwegians and Swedes, thank you. Well, then there was the Johnson-Reed Act of 1924, which drastically reduced that annual cap by about half, down to about 165,000. It especially targeted Southern European and Eastern Europeans, specifically Jews and Italians, whom lawmakers deemed racially, I love this language, racially undesirable. If this was true for Jews and Italians, what needs to be said about blacks and Asians? Blacks were always welcome in the United States as long as they became slaves. And the Chinese were explicitly limited by the Chinese Exclusion Acts of 1882 and the Scott Act of 1888. All of this should sound somewhat familiar to any of us who listen to the 6 o'clock news. Returning for the moment to Jews and Italians, how did these people circumvent these restrictive policies? They practiced illegal immigration. Yes, they did. Barred from legal entry, Jewish migrants utilized an international underworld of smuggling networks. Let's look at that a little closer. Okay? Right here, right here. No, not there. There. They used forged documents. Immigrants arrived at major ports like New York using fake passports, altered visas, and assumed identities. Now, think for a moment. During the Second World War, this is how many of our people escaped concentration camps and extermination through false passports, altered visas, and assumed identities. But that was also done earlier because people needed to get out of Europe and they needed a better life. Let's not pretend that it didn't happen. It did. Also, there was the Cuban route. Many traveled legally to Cuba, then perhaps with Prohibition era liquor bootleggers or other means, they took boats and ended up in Florida. I had a woman in my congregation, Fania Spielberg. Yes, she was the former stepmother of the famous Steven Spielberg. And her parents were first cousins, Eastern European Jews. Her father, by the way, had hidden in a closet in his kitchen while the Cossacks came in and hacked his mother and father to death, calling them filthy Jews, dirty Jews, Christ killers. They called them Christ killers. So Avram and Sarah needed to get to the United States because they knew what violence looked like. They came to Cuba. Fania was born in Cuba, and their daughter, and then they came to the United States by hook or by crook. So, what about border crossings? Migrants traveled to Canada or to Mexico to sneak across the United States border. Yes, our nice Jewish migrants, no doubt some Italian migrants too, snuck is not a verb, sneaked across the border. My great aunt, my Tanta Leicha, my grandmother's sister, did that. She came here from Europe through the Canadian border. It's good she did, because otherwise she would have been shot dead in the forest along with the 3,500 other Jews in her village in Europe. And she lived here. She came here and she lived to be 106, living in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. So these are the ways in which we survive. I'm told that there are thousands of Israelis right now in the United States who've overstayed their visas, who wanted to build a new life in America and have done so by any means they can. I also have researched and discovered that Hasidim, who have very ingrown networks, and very developed social networks, have on occasion smuggled people to and from Israel, uh, not for malicious purposes, but just to be here. So this happens. It does. It'll be a good thing if this didn't happen, I suppose, but it did, and it was meant to happen. So you see, it's not just the other guy who was deemed undesirable. Sometimes it's folks like you and me. Sometimes it's our kind who come here by hook or by crook. This is true of all kinds of people, including Jews, who have a colorful history of coming to America by hook or by crook in the 20th century. So, in forming an immigration policy and in shaping our attitudes towards immigration, what contribution does the Torah make? Well, we're going to look at Deuteronomy 24, 17 to 22. And there are actually not 6 verses there, but 7 verses. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Right? 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. It is 6 verses. And there are 4 mentions of the foreigner in these verses, and there are mentions of our responsibility. Let me just look at that passage with you. That's a slightly abbreviated version you have there on the screen. I will read the whole text. You are not to despise the foreigner or the orphan or of the justice which is his due. and you are not to take a widow's clothing as collateral for a loan. These are poor people, orphans, widows, foreigners, people without any power. Verse 18. Rather, remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and Adonai your God redeemed you from there. That is why I am ordering you to do this. That's what God says. When harvesting the grain for your field, if you forget a sheaf of grain there, you are not to go back and get it. It will remain there for the foreigner, the orphan and the widow, so that Adonai your God will bless you in all the work that you do. When you beat your olive tree and beat the olives out of the branches of the tree, you are not to go back over the branches again. The olives that are left will be left for the foreigner, the orphan, the widow. When you gather grapes from your vineyard, you are not to return and pick grapes a second time. What is left will be left for the foreigner, for the orphan, the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. That is why I am ordering you to do this. So says our God. You will notice that 4 times in these 6 verses, the foreigner is mentioned as someone for whose well-being Adonai holds Israel accountable. Yes, the foreigner is a person for whom our God holds us accountable. The foreigner comes among us powerless, but the Almighty God is his hero. Is this a popular viewpoint in our day? It depends who you ask, but I wouldn't count on it. Many people in the white nationalist movement identify as Christian patriots, but I would bet that passages like these that I just read are not part of their memory verse packet. So, commenting on a parallel passage in the Torah found in Exodus, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks insists that verses such as these have much to say to all of us, to white nationalist Christian patriots, and especially to Jews. Listen to Rabbi Sacks. Listen to what he says. It is terrifying, in retrospect, to grasp how seriously the Torah took the phenomenon of xenophobia, hatred of the stranger. It is as if the Torah were saying with the utmost clarity, reason is insufficient, sympathy is inadequate. Only the force of history and memory is strong enough to form a counterweight to hate. Why should you not hate the stranger? Asks the Torah. Because you once stood where he stands now. And in a country of immigrants, that is true. You know the heart of the stranger because you were once a stranger in the land of Egypt. If you are human, so is he. I made you, Jewish people, into the archetypal strangers so that you would fight for the rights of strangers, for your own and those of others, wherever they are, whoever they are, whatever the color of their skin or the nature of their culture, because though they are not in your image, says God, they are nevertheless in mine. There is only one reply strong enough to answer the question, why should I not hate the stranger? And the answer is, because the stranger is me. And yes, sometimes our own folks are the undesirables and the strangers. It's so widespread. I had a friend named Terry Esposito, who was from Bushwick, Brooklyn, a devout Catholic and a friend of the Jews, an Italian Catholic. And she said that when she went to church, the nuns in the church especially took a disliking to the Italian children because they looked at them as low class. It's common within the same people groups, it's common between people groups. We treat people as undesirable. Our God would like us to remember that we shouldn't do that. But will we? I think we might continue to treat people as undesirable. But Rabbi Sacks reminds us that the Torah tells us wherever they are, whoever they are, whatever the color of their skin or the nature of their culture, they are our responsibility. Think again of what you're used to thinking. And may God be merciful to all of us while we are merciful to others. Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Thank you for listening. And I trust that what I gave you to think about is worth your time.